Alright, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if it's the first time you visit here. In this video I'm going to show you a passwordless auth system that's called Stytch. Stytch reached out to me and wanted me to create a video for them. And as you know, I'm quite restrictive with sponsored content on my channel. But this one, I actually think it's pretty cool. And I think it can be useful for you to know about and how to set it up with React and Typescript that I'm going to use for this little tutorial. So I'm eager to get started, so let's do that instead for me sitting here chatting about stuff. We're going to start by looking at the dashboard for Stytch. So if you go to stytch.com, create an account and fill in all the stuff there. You don't need to fill in any billing or credit card if you're just going to use it for developing your small little own projects. So don't worry about that. Create an account and log in and you will see something like this. Maybe not just exactly like this because I have been doing stuff here. So what you have here, it's a kind of a regular dashboard. It's pretty easy to find around here. This one here will tell you some nice little steps that you need to provide. So you can see here that I've configured my redirect URLs. I have mounted the Stytch SDK authenticated user. I can click that this one is complete. Manage sessions, easily manage sessions with Stytch Session Management product. I haven't done that, but I can complete it anyway. So it just small little reminders here for you what you can do to get you started. Multi-factor authentication, that is optional. I haven't done that, but I will click complete and go live. I haven't done that. And that will tell us that everything is complete here. So this is the dashboard that we have here. And there are a few things that we need to do before we start our little application, our little project. And the first thing we can check out is the project settings. When you create your project, you will have everything about the project here. So the only thing I've done here is to actually rename it to Stytch Tutorial. And one important thing more is under the redirect URLs, you can see that we have a login, sign up and invite link here. So we need to fill these ones out. I've already done that. I can delete this for us, so that we can fill them in again. Something like that. And then we click create redirect URL. And we're going to be on localhost 3000. So that's fine. HTTP localhost:3000 and / And when we use this pre-built SDK with Stytch, it's going to route back to your application where you want it to route. And I want it to go to a page that's called authenticate. And then we can choose the type for this one. So you can either have a login, sign up or invite. So you can have different URLs for these three of them. In my case, I'm going to set them to all and confirm because we're only going to use that one for this project. So even if you sign in or you create an account or if you're invited, we're going to route them back to authenticate. But you can set them differently if you want the user to land on different pages, depending on if they're signing up for the first time or if they come back and log in again, or if you send an invite link to someone else. And of course, we're using the test environment now and not the live environment. Then we have something down here that's called SDK configuration. And you can see that we need to also allow our application to this SDK. So we have to turn on the stuff that we want to use in the SDK. In my case, I'm only going to use the email magic links. But if you want to use auth, web auth, passcodes and crypto stuff here, you have to turn it on for the SDK. And you can also disable the complete SDK if you don't want browsers to be able to use your authentication system here from Stytch. And it's the test environment, of course. And I also added in a valid domain. So make sure that you add in localhost:3000 here also to authorize the SDK to be using that domain. That's very important to set this stuff up here. Otherwise, you will run into trouble. And the other stuff here that we have, API keys are pretty important. We have something that's called a public token. That's the one that we're going to use in the app. And this one is safe to use in the client. It doesn't matter if it's in your application. So it's really, really safe. What you shouldn't use is the secret that is actually, you can see, you can't even see it here. And the project ID, that one we're not going to use at all. We're only going to use the public token. So make sure to save this one. You can actually just click it and it's copy it to the dashboard. Really, really handy here. So that's pretty great. But the public token, that's the one that we're going to use. And this is everything that we need to do, actually, because, as I said, we're only going to use the email magic link. And that is a link will get sent to your email when you log in. And then you click a button and then it will log you in. So you don't need to type in any password or anything like that. And if you want, you can also change some stuff here with the email template. This is how it looks when you receive it to your email. And now you can actually just change the font and the color of the button, and you can send yourself a test email and stuff. Yeah, change the color to match your brand more or something like that. And one more thing here, and that's the user management. And here your users will go when you have some user in your system. You can see I have myself here, so if I click, and the status says active, and that's very important because then you know that this user has successfully logged in and created an account here. And the other ones aren't filled in as we haven't provided any data. We just have the email address in this tutorial. And also, as I said, we're going to use the client-side SDK, and we're going to use the React one for this one. I'm going to use React and TypeScript. So at stytch.com and the docs, you have all the information here about the SDK that we're going to use and all the other information that you need about Stytch. So they have quite an extensive documentation here. So this is where I found everything about how to create this little login system that we're going to do in the next part. And also, that's the library that we're going to use for the React application. But I will show you how to install that one in the next part also, so we don't have to think about that. We're going to set it up and create this little application and use passwordless auth to log in and authenticate our application. All right. So I think that's it for this one. Make sure that you do all these steps here in the dashboard that I showed you. Very important to have the redirect URLs, and also make sure that the SDK is set to your domain, localhost 3000, and activate email magic links. Very, very important. Otherwise, this won't work. So let's move on to the next part and actually start coding. So this is exciting. This is actually the first tutorial I've done in a while. It's been a few months since I recorded anything. So this is pretty exciting for me too. So we're going to start creating this little project. We're going to have a little login screen with the pre-built SDK from Stytch. And we're just going to log into a kind of a profile page, but it really isn't a profile page because I won't focus anything on the actual design in this one, because authentication and authorization and stuff like that are pretty advanced as they are, so I don't want to throw a lot of that other stuff in. And it should be fine because I have a lot of videos on it on my channel already, so you should be fine with that. So the first thing you have to do is to actually download the starter files. I've pre-built a project for you that we're going to use for this one, and it's called starter files, so download that one from GitHub or clone it or whatever you do, and make sure to navigate inside of that folder and run npm install like that, and it will install the dependencies. And the dependencies actually are not that much for now. If we look here in the project, this is the project files. So if we look in the package file here, you can see that I've actually just installed React Router DOM, and that is for our routing. Otherwise, this is a Vite setup with the Typescript. So that's going to be all the dependencies here. We have React, of course, and we have the Vite plugin for React and Typescript, because I'm always using Typescript now. And I'm also using the new version of React, and that's version 18. So if we look inside of the main, you can see that I turned off the strict mode, and that is because Stytch, when I record this one, hadn't planned for React 18. So it will behave a little strange with React strict mode, because they've changed how the use effects run in strict mode in React 18. And that is because they have concurrent mode and stuff like that now. But they will fix this pretty soon. I've talked with them and I asked them about this, so no worries about that. But I'm not going to activate it inside of here. There are also ways, of course, to kind of bypass this behavior. But I won't go into that now because you shouldn't need to do that. I guess they'll fix it in a few days or something. So maybe when this video comes out, they have already fixed it. And you can see that we have the new root API here that they use in React 18. So everything seems to be set up and working fine here. We have the app. Just going to show you short here what I've done. I've just created some styles here to center that little SDK that we're going to use. And it's a pre-built little login field that Stytch provides us. One more thing that I've done in the index.html, very important. We have to actually import the script here for Stytch, otherwise it won't work. The other one that we're going to install is just a library for React. So we need to also do this in the head in the index.html file, otherwise it won't load the Stytch. Okay, and then I have 3 different routes here. So I have the login, that's going to be the start page, the home page, so to say. And authenticate is going to be the route, the page that you be routed to when you click on the link in the email that you get back from Stytch. So this one is just kind of a middle hand, so to say. You go there and then it routes you, hopefully to the profile when it has authenticated you. So it's not a page that you will stay on. It will send the authentication with the token that we get back from the SDK that I'm going to show you also. And if we're authenticated, it will send you to the profile page and you are logged in. And I also created an ugly little menu here where you can jump back and forth between the login and the profile pages. And these ones here, the authenticate, login, and profile are just empty components. Profile actually has some stuff here. Yeah, we're going to show the email because that is the only data that we're going to have for the user. And I have a logout button also where we're going to do some stuff and then we navigate back to the login screen. And this is all from the React router. I also have quite extensive tutorials now on how to use React router, so you should be fine if you look in my channel for that. All right, so let's start this. We're going to go first to the documentation, and we can see here at stytch.com/docs/SDKs and /introduction. So here they tell you all about that little script tag that I showed you that you need to place in the head of your application. But I've already done that, so you don't need to do it. What you need to do is that we're going to install the Stytch React library. So we can actually just, yeah, they have this nice little, you just click here and it will copy it for you. So we're going to copy it, go back to the terminal, paste it in, and you can see it's npm install at stytch-react-save. And this will install the React library for us. So just wait for it. All right. And I type in npm run dev. And now it's on localhost 3000. So that's good. And I think I want to have my app here. We can also open up the console just for old habit's sake. So you can see I jump between the profile and the login. So these are the 2 only pages that we're actually going to show here in this application. So we're just going to display the email and then we log out and we route back to the login page. So very, very simple and ugly, but that's fine because it's not about design or UX or anything like that in this tutorial. All right, go back to the code. We can check the package and you can see that we installed the Stytch library right now. So that's fine. And it's actually on version 0.2 now, so it may be that I already fixed that little strict mode. I don't know, but they should fix it very, very soon, they said to me. All right, so we're going to be in the main.tsx first. We have to wrap our application in a provider for Stytch. So first we import something that's called Stytch provider, and you can see I love this stuff here with Typescript and everything. We get this IntelliSense here, the auto completion, and we have something that's called init Stytch, and it will find it from the Stytch library that we installed. And then we can go down maybe here. We're going to create a const, capital letters, Stytch _public_token, like that. And then if you remember from the first part in our dashboard, it's here. We have the project settings. No, not the project settings. We have the API keys. And down here, we have the public token. Click on that one and it will copy it for you. Go back to the code. And this is a string, so we paste it in as a string. That's the public token for our application. Very important. And then we create a const called Stytch equal, and we run the init Stytch method, and we send in the Stytch token, the public token, and this will create a client for us. You can see you have everything. If you hover over them here, you can see the types here and what params they want and stuff like that. You can see that we get back a Stytch client, so you can name it Stytch client also if you want to do that. So that's our client. Then we can provide it to our application. So we have the Stytch provider that we imported. It has a prop called Stytch, and we give it Stytch. That's the Stytch client. And we move the app inside, and this should be enough in this component. We are importing the provider and the init method for Stytch so that we can create a Stytch client, and we provide it down our application by wrapping the app inside of the Stytch provider, and we use the public token from the Stytch dashboard. All right, save the file. So let's move to the login page, and we're going to import some stuff here also, because we're going to use the SDK, the pre-built one now, so we can see it on our page. So we import Stytch, capital S, and SDK product types. That one actually didn't give me any auto completion, but all right. From @Stytch /Stytch React. So, and then if we go back to the documentation here, you scroll down and you can see the UI components. We're going to use the pre-built one, and it looks something like this, so it's pretty neat actually. We don't have to build it ourselves, but you have methods and stuff to build your own UI if you want to do that. It's a little bit more complex and you need to keep track of things yourself, but you can do it, of course. But this is pretty neat if you quickly want to create an authentication system to use this pre-built one. I think it works fine. And as this is passwordless, you only provide the email because we're using email magic links. So you don't need to provide any password. And that's what's pretty neat about this. So you can see here, you need to create a config object. And I'm actually going to copy this one here like that. And I go back to the code and I paste it in so that we have it. And I'm going to go through it also. Of course, you can see here, login or sign up view config. It's the same config for both sign up and login. And then we have a prop. This is an object here. So we have the first property of this object is the email magic links options. And that's another object here. Create user as pending, set it to true. You can have it as not pending if you want to have that, but I'm doing it like they do in the tutorial in the documentation. Login expiration minutes. You can set a separate expiration minutes, expiration time for your sign up and login. And login redirect URL. You can see that they have example.com authenticate. Of course, we're on localhost :3000. So we're going to change to that. So this is, of course, where you provide whatever link you may have to your application. And it's going to stay on 30 minutes. I think that's fine. And the products that we're going to use are the email magic links. So that's an array. And from the SDK product types, that's the one that we imported up here. We have a property called email links. So that's the setup object for Stytch. And then down below here, we actually don't need to make an implicit return for this one. So we can remove that. I'm going to make an implicit return. We have the Stytch component that we imported. And then we have the prop called login or sign up view. And you probably guessed it, we're going to give it the login or sign up view config object. And we can close it like that. And that should be our login screen. So if we go back to our application, to the login, and you can see that we have the sign up here. That's fine. And it's telling us that we're using the test version of Stytch. So that's also fine. So we can actually log in now if we want to do that, but we're not doing anything. We don't authenticate this or anything like that. So we're going to fix that also. Select myself here, and you can see that it failed to send the magic link. And we get a little bit information here on why. So I actually thought it was able to send it. Yeah, that's because it's HTTPS. So we have to change this. Very important when you create your allowed routes. if you have a secure protocol, you have to have an S, HTTPS. But in our case, we're not on that secure protocol, so it's just HTTP, and then it won't work. So you have to be very, very specific here. Save it, go back, reload it, and probably it should work. And this is how it looks when you get the mail. You get a mail called login, and then you have the mail here, and you click login. And you can see that we're on the authenticate page. So this is where the magic's going to happen. We're going to authenticate this token, as you can see up here, that we get back. Stytch route us back to the authenticate and create this token. So this token is the one that we're going to use to actually authenticate the user. And that's what we're going to do in the authenticate component. So go back to the code editor. And in the authenticate component, we're going to import some stuff here first. Import, we need React for this one from React. And this is because I'm going to use a use effect. You can, of course, also do it like this if you want to import the use effect directly. But I like to grab it from the React itself. So I import React only. Then we're going to import use navigate and use search params from React router DOM. And from Stytch, we're going to import use Stytch. That's the hook they provide us with. And another hook, use Stytch Session from @Stytch React. So that's the ones that we need. And then we have our component here. So first, we need to make sure to grab that little token from the URL params here. And we can do that with the use search params hook from React Router. So const, we destructure out the params. You have a setter also for the params, but we only need the params. So it's an array that we destructure out. Equal use search params. Like that. And then we have the token here from the params we call get. And we get the param that's called token. And this should give us the token in the const that's called token. Then we have the Stytch, the hook use Stytch. Like that. We don't need to provide it with anything. And we also want to get the session. And we can get the session from use Stytch session. Very, very clean here. They have a hook for everything. So we also want to navigate, const navigate, use navigate. And this is also React Router stuff. You don't need to use React Router if you don't want to do that. And then the way they do it in their documentation is they use a use effect. So React use effect, and this is what I talked about. I like to grab the use effect like this because then I can see what's from React and not when you have a very large component. But this is, of course, very, very subjective on your preferences. For this one, we're going to have a dependency array. We're going to have Stytch and the session. That's the one that we're going to use inside of this effect. So we have to provide it in the dependency array. So first, if we have a session, we don't need to authenticate anymore. So if session, then we're going to navigate to the profile page. If we have a session, that means that the user has successfully logged in and we have the session. Otherwise, if we have a token and we don't have a session, then we can do some authentication here. And Stytch provides us with something for the magic links. So Stytch.magic links. If this would have been something else and not magic links, they have a property for that, and you can call the authenticate method on that one. They have this in their documentation and explain it there. So we have the authenticate, and yet again you can see Typescript. It knows what properties we have. So that's very, very nice to have these little auto completions. So authenticate, and this method wants the token as the first argument. And then we have a little object here, and we have something called session underscore duration underscore minutes. And you can see that it provides us with that also. And I absolutely love Typescript. So this is so neat. And we can set it to 60 minutes as they do in their documentation. So this is everything we need to do here inside of this use effect. And this works, as I said before, if we have a session, if this one isn't undefined or null or anything, you can see here if we hover, it can be null or it can be a session. They have the types. I should have told you that also probably because Stytch, the library, has built-in types, so you don't need to load any types from anywhere else or something like that. So if we have a session, we're going to navigate to the profile page. That means that we don't need to run this again. And if we have a token, we check so that we actually grab something from that token URL param. And we don't have a session, then we're going to do this authentication from stitch.magiclinks authenticate. And that will trigger this hook here to update when we have a session. And then it will not run this, it will run this the next time because we will have a session. We've set the use effect to run when Stytch update and session update. And this is also what isn't working right now in React 18 in strict mode because it won't update these ones here. So they have to modify some stuff in their code for it to work. And also instead of returning authenticate here, we can actually authenticating user. So this one will be shown as long as we don't have a session. So it's kind of a loading state or something while we wait, or authenticating user like that. All right, so this is everything we need for the authenticate. And we're actually also going to create something here. The login, we already finished this one. We have the login screen. So the profile, we want to show the email. I'm going to do that before we try our application. So from Stytch, we're going to import use Stytch user. With that hook, we can grab the user and also use Stytch like that. And up here, const Stytch equal use Stytch. I love these small little hooks. And const user use Stytch user like that. There you have it. And we have the handle logout. When we log out, we want to revoke the session. And this is an async function. So I mark it with a wait. And from the Stytch, we can see here again, we have the magic links. But this is actually not the one that we're going to use now. We're actually going to revoke the session. So I'm going to grab the session, and then we have something called revoke, and we call that method, and this will revoke the session. All right, and then we wait this, and then we navigate back to the login screen, and the login screen is on the main route. So that's what we're doing here. And then we have the profile, and you can see that I marked it with email goes here. So instead of email goes here, we're going to change it to the user. And the user can actually be undefined, I think. Yeah, it can be null. So we have a question mark dot emails. And there can be multiple emails, but in our case, it's only the first one that we're going to care about. So we can grab it directly like this. But of course, you shouldn't do it like this. If you have multiple emails, you have to loop through them and stuff like that. But now we know that this is the only email that we're going to have. So that's fine. And this is everything that we need to do in the profile page. So we import these hooks from Stytch. We create a Stytch client. Again, you can see if we hover here, we have the Stytch client. And we have a user that can be null or it can be a user. And from the user, we grab the first email to show it on the profile page. And if we click the logout button, we revoke the session and then we navigate back to the home screen. So this is everything that is for this application actually. So the main part is in this authenticate that we created here, where we actually check if we have a session, or if we don't have a session, we authenticate. We try to authenticate with the token. And of course, you can make this a little bit more sophisticated and handle the errors and stuff like that to display for the user, or if they should go to another page if there is an error and you can't log in and stuff like that. But I won't go into that here. This video is already getting quite long. So we can test the app now. So we go back to our application. You can see that we actually have this session now here. So it's displaying my email here. That's fine. Log out. Continue with email. And we click the login. And now you can see that it said authenticating user, and then it routed me to the profile page. Just going to check so we don't have any errors. No, it looks clean and nice and fine, and that's good. So this is Stytch, and this is actually something I really enjoy. You can see it's pretty easy to set up the authentication, and then you can build your own backend and stuff like that, and do your authorization and integrate it with Stytch. But I didn't do that in this tutorial because I think this is fine. This is fine. This should be a simple display on how you can integrate a very, very nice passwordless authentication in your application. So hope you enjoy this one. If you like my stuff, please subscribe and see you in another one.